People rarely say directly what they truly want from you. They tell you they care, that they only want what is best for you, and that they will always stand by your side. But true intentions are rarely revealed while someone is speaking. They appear when you say no, when keeping a promise begins to cost them an opportunity, when you ask them to share responsibility for the advice they gave, or when you are no longer as useful as you once were. In this video, you will learn 7 moments when true intentions become much harder to conceal. The first 6 rules will help you recognize promises that do not deserve your trust, advice that quietly serves the person giving it, and relationships that remain warm only while you are useful. But if you stop there, you may notice the right signs and still reach the wrong conclusion. The final rule will show you how to separate a temporary mistake from a dangerous pattern, so you know when to keep trusting, when to become more cautious, and when to step back before you are the one who pays the price. Because noticing suspicious behavior is not the hardest part. The hardest part is knowing whether you are seeing someone's real intentions or turning one bad moment into a false judgment. Machiavelli wrote, "Everyone sees what you appear to be, few really know what you are." He was writing about rulers and public image, but the same principle exists in ordinary life. Words create appearances. Cost, self-interest, and behavior under pressure reveal what a person truly prioritizes. You do not need to read minds or set traps for anyone. The first test is much simpler. Watch what happens when a promise is no longer free. Rule 1. Watch what changes when there is a cost. Someone says they support you, but so far that support has cost them nothing. They say they will defend your idea, but no one has asked them to stand in front of people who oppose it. They say they will remain by your side, but no better opportunity has appeared. Their words may be sincere, they simply have not been tested. I imagine a colleague who often says, "Do not worry, I am on your side." Then your idea is criticized in a meeting, and that person remains silent. Later, they explain that they still support you, they simply did not believe it was the right moment to speak. Their explanation may be true, but whatever the reason, you have learned something their earlier promise could not tell you. Their support lasted until it began to threaten their own position. That does not make them a bad person, it tells you where the limit of their support lies. Reading intentions does not mean condemning someone the moment they disappoint you. It means adjusting the weight you give to the evidence. A promise made when there is nothing to lose is a declaration. A promise kept after it becomes inconvenient begins to become evidence of character. Machiavelli observed that when danger is distant, people may promise their property, their lives, and their loyalty. But when necessity comes close, those promises often weaken. A commitment that has never faced pressure cannot tell you how someone will choose when two interests collide. A person may believe they are courageous until courage threatens their career. They may believe they are generous until generosity interferes with their plans. They may believe they are loyal until loyalty closes the door to a better opportunity. You do not need to manufacture a crisis to test anyone. Observe the natural costs that appear. Do they keep their word when doing so is inconvenient? Do they show up when no one is watching? When they fail, do they acknowledge their choice or rewrite the story until you begin to doubt the promise ever existed? A promise reveals the image someone wants to create. The price they are willing to pay reveals the order of their priorities. But sometimes intention is hidden inside advice that appears completely selfless. Rule 2. Find the person who benefits. When someone advises you, ask 2 questions. Does the advice make sense? And if you follow it, who benefits from the future it creates? A manager tells you to be patient. They may be right, but your patience may also allow them to keep giving you more responsibility without increasing your pay or authority. A friend tells you to reject an opportunity because it is too risky. They may care about you, but the opportunity may also make you more independent or take you away from a role they have grown comfortable with. The fact that someone benefits does not prove bad intentions. Healthy relationships often contain mutual benefit. What you are looking for is imbalance. Are they transferring most of the risk to you while keeping the benefit and control? Do they call your sacrifice loyalty while sacrificing nothing themselves? In The Prince, Machiavelli suggests judging advisors by observing whose interests repeatedly appear inside their counsel. When a person continually thinks first of personal advantage, they cannot be trusted to protect another person's interests. So ask what the advisor gains if you follow the advice, what they lose if you refuse, and whether they will carry any part of the consequences if they are wrong. A person who will not pay for your failure can easily recommend that you take the risk. Someone who benefits from your passivity may call it patience. Someone who needs you to remain dependent may call your independence selfishness. Advice becomes easier to understand when you can see the future it creates for the person giving it. Rule 3. Flattery reveals the identity they want you to protect. Pay attention to statements such as, "You are much smarter than they are," only "You are brave enough to do this," or "Someone as loyal as you would never leave us now." On the surface, these are compliments, but each one contains a behavioral instruction. If you disagree, perhaps you are no longer intelligent. If you step back, perhaps you are no longer brave. If you set a limit, perhaps you are no longer loyal. This is why flattery can be more powerful than a direct command. A command creates pressure from outside. Flattery turns that pressure into something you impose on yourself. You act not because someone ordered you to, but because you want to remain worthy of the identity they gave you. Imagine a manager saying, "I chose you because you are the only person here mature enough to put the team above personal interests." Then they ask you to accept more work without additional authority or reward. Refusing is no longer merely a decision about workload. It has become a judgment about your character. This is one reason intelligent people can still be manipulated. They are pulled into defending an image of themselves. If someone needs to believe they are always intelligent, intelligence can be used to control them. If they need to believe they are always kind, kindness can be used to control them. Machiavelli considered flatterers dangerous because people are easily pleased by opinions that make them feel better about themselves. His solution was not to reject every compliment, but to listen to truthful people and still form an independent judgment. Not every compliment is manipulation, but be careful when praise appears immediately before a request. Are they recognizing a quality or turning it into an obligation? Separate the compliment from the decision. Would you still agree if the praise had never been spoken? Would the choice still make sense if it did not make you feel intelligent, generous, courageous, or special? The most dangerous flattery does not merely describe who you are. It tells you how you must continue behaving to preserve that image. And when praise is no longer enough to control you, another moment reveals intentions much faster. You say no. Rule 4. Boundaries show whether they respect you or only need your agreement. It is difficult to judge someone's intentions when you always agree with them. If you are always available and always providing what they need, they have never been forced to choose between respecting you and getting the outcome they want. A boundary forces that choice. Imagine someone who often tells you, "You are the only person I truly trust." Whenever they need help, you appear. Then one day you say, "I cannot do that this time." The language changes immediately. "I did not think you were this selfish. You have changed, after everything I have done for you." The entire history of the relationship is now being used to pressure one decision in the present. Someone may feel disappointed when you refuse. That is normal. Emotion is not proof of manipulation. What matters is how they handle it. Can they negotiate without attacking your character? Can they accept that you have your own time, limits, and priorities? Or does every act of independence bring guilt, anger, silence, or the threat of withdrawn affection? Machiavelli did not use the modern language of personal boundaries, but his method paid close attention to what happened when access, advantage, or control was threatened. While you continue agreeing, another person's respect and self-interest can appear identical. When you refuse, they must show what matters more: respect for you or continued access to your agreement. Do not create a problem simply to watch the reaction. Set a real, reasonable boundary when you genuinely need one, then observe how the person adapts. Someone who respects you may dislike the boundary, but they will still recognize your right to set it. Someone who respects only your usefulness will experience the boundary as betrayal. Agreement conceals expectation. A boundary makes that expectation visible. Rule 5. Watch how they treat people who cannot reward them. The way someone treats you may be sincere, but it may also be shaped by your position. Perhaps you are their superior, possess a useful network, or control money, information, or opportunity they want. Under those conditions, politeness is profitable. So widen the frame. Now, how do they treat a junior employee, a server, someone who recently lost status, or a former ally who can no longer open doors? One impatient moment does not reveal an entire person. You are searching for a repeated structure. A person who consistently charms superiors while humiliating subordinates is showing you how they organize the world. People are ranked by usefulness. Respect is distributed according to power. Notice how they speak about people who once helped them. Do they still acknowledge what the other person contributed, or rewrite the history and portray a former ally as worthless? Notice how they distribute credit. When things succeed, do they remember less powerful contributors? When things fail, do they search for the weakest person to blame? Notice how they behave without an audience. Kindness performed in public may serve reputation. Kindness shown when no one is watching offers a different kind of evidence. None of these signs proves bad intentions by itself, but together they help answer an important question. Is this person's respect stable, or does it rise and fall with the power of whoever stands before them? Sometimes character is clearest, where decency provides no advantage. Rule 6. Watch what changes when power changes. Some relationships appear stable for years, not necessarily because they are built on loyalty, but because the structure of benefit has never changed. Someone still needs your position, recommendation, access, money, or protection. The real test begins when the balance of power shifts. Machiavelli recorded one of the most ruthless examples of this mechanism at the end of 1502. Cesare Borgia was trying to consolidate power in central Italy. A group of commanders who had served him feared that his ambition would threaten their territories, so they formed an alliance against him. Rebellions began, and for a brief period Borgia became vulnerable. At that moment, he began speaking of reconciliation. He negotiated, offered assurances, signed an agreement, and paid money. From the outside, he appeared to accept that he needed to coexist with the men who had betrayed him. But while negotiations continued, Borgia quietly rebuilt his strength. He recruited soldiers, received reinforcements, and concealed the scale of his preparations. Even after he became strong enough to retaliate openly, he maintained the appearance of reconciliation because deception was safer than direct war. Near the end of December, the commanders were persuaded to wait for him at Senigallia. One of them, Vitellozzo Vitelli, felt uneasy. According to Machiavelli's account, he understood that a person should not offend a prince and then place trust in him afterward. Gutierrez he remained. When Borgia arrived with overwhelming force, the commanders met him with small escorts. He received them warmly, while his men separated them from their troops and guided them into his residence. Once the doors closed, they were arrested. 2 were killed that night. The other 2 were later executed. Machiavelli, who had been sent by Florence to observe Borgia, recorded the method used at Senigallia. Their mistake was not simply that they believed words. They knew Borgia was dangerous. Their deeper mistake was that they saw the form of reconciliation but failed to update the structure of interests beneath it. When Borgia was weak, he needed negotiation. Once his forces recovered, The men who betrayed him were no longer necessary allies. They became threats he was powerful enough to remove. The ceremony remained, the assurances remained, the friendly behavior remained. But the reason Borgia had to respect them had disappeared. The story is extreme, but the mechanism is familiar. Someone treats you warmly while you hold authority, then becomes distant after you lose the position. A person praises your talent while you can create opportunities for them, but the admiration disappears when the opportunity disappears. Not every relationship that changes with circumstances was false. People gain new responsibilities, distance grows, and goals change. What matters is whether the change closely follows your usefulness. When you no longer provide the same benefit, do they still treat you with basic respect? Can they accept a relationship with less access? Or does their attitude shift immediately when your position changes? Power does not always corrupt loyalty. Sometimes it simply reveals what that loyalty was built upon. By this point, you have seen 6 conditions that make intentions harder to conceal. But a sign is not the same as proof. Without understanding that difference, the first 6 rules may help you see more clearly or help you misjudge someone with greater confidence. That is why the final rule determines how you should use everything you have learned. Rule 7. Do not judge a moment. Look for a pattern. One unusual action creates a signal, not a conclusion. Someone who breaks a promise once may be facing a crisis. Someone who reacts badly to your boundary may be shocked. Someone who behaves impatiently may be living through an unusually difficult day. If you turn every moment into a verdict, you are not reading people. You are turning fear into false certainty. What you need is repetition under similar conditions. Begin with 4 questions. First, does the behavior repeat? Does the person repeatedly promise more than they deliver, take credit during success but transfer responsibility during failure, or claim to respect boundaries while punishing you whenever those boundaries become inconvenient? Second, does the behavior appear in multiple contexts? Do they react this way only with you, or follow the same pattern with colleagues, friends, relatives, and former partners? Behavior repeated across relationships carries more information than a single conflict. Third, does the gap between words and actions move in a consistent direction? Everyone sometimes fails to live according to their beliefs, but pay attention when the gap always benefits the same person. They speak about responsibility, but responsibility always belongs to you. They praise fairness, but the best rewards always belong to them. Finally, what happens when pressure appears? What happens when there is a cost, when ego is wounded, when power changes, when you are no longer useful, or when a better option appears? Pressure does not create every part of someone's character, but it makes the performance harder to maintain. You still do not need dangerous tests. Use small, low-risk situations that occur naturally. Share information that is not sensitive and see whether they respect your privacy. Refuse a small but reasonable request and observe the reaction. When someone offers advice, ask what part of the responsibility they are willing to share. During success, see whether they share credit. During failure, see whether they search for a solution or a scapegoat. Small situations are useful because people prepare carefully for dramatic moments. They know they are being watched and manage their image. But across repeated choices, their natural order of priorities becomes harder to hide. Think of judgment in 3 levels. The first is a signal. One behavior attracts your attention. You do not ignore it, but you do not conclude. The second is a pattern. The same behavior returns under the same type of incentive or pressure. The third is an adjustment of trust. You do not need to declare that someone is completely good or bad. You only need to adjust the amount of power you give them. Trust is not always a switch that must be either on or off. It can be a dial. You may maintain the relationship while sharing less sensitive information. You may continue listening to advice while verifying it independently. You may continue working together while requiring clearer commitments. You may forgive a mistake without building an important decision on an untested promise. This is where Machiavelli's perspective becomes a method rather than a collection of dark quotations. He argued that a ruler must know how to ask questions, listen to the right people, and then form an independent judgment. A person without judgment eventually becomes dependent on the judgment of someone else. Do not hand your judgment entirely to another person's words, but do not hand it to your own fear either. Do not let a comforting explanation make you ignore a clear pattern, but do not let one painful experience turn every person into an enemy. Look at the evidence and allow behavior to update your trust step by step. The goal is not to expose everyone. The goal is to stop giving untested trust the weight of proven character. Those are 7 rules that make true intentions impossible to conceal. But remember, reading intentions does not mean distrusting every act of kindness. Clarity does not come from assuming the worst. It comes from refusing to let a comforting story outweigh the full body of evidence. Human beings are complex. They can care about you and still fail when loyalty becomes too expensive. They can hurt you without constructing a secret plan. That is why you do not judge a moment. You look for the pattern. The danger of appearances is not that they are always false. The danger is that they can continue long after the reality underneath them has changed. Machiavellian awareness is not paranoia. It is the discipline of allowing behavior to revise the story that words first created. You do not need to see inside anyone's mind. People conceal intentions inside explanations. Over time, they reveal them through the choices they repeatedly make. Do not judge a person only by promises made while everything is easy. Watch what remains after the cost appears. If you want to see people more clearly without becoming bitter, subscribe to Machiavelli's Mirror. Here, we do not learn how to control other people. We learn how to stop other people from controlling our judgment.